Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of Unpacking the Backpack. I'm not gonna lie, I record from my garage, and it is a little cold here in southeast Texas. I'm in the Houston area, and we got a little bit of this polar vortex, so everyone in America understands that when it's in the 30s or high 20s in Texas, it's cold. And when it gets below 32, we're talking about 0 degrees Celsius or less. So still a little chilly here. But I'm going to try to warm things up with this podcast. And really, I want to dive into this concept of future proofing learning. I talked about it and introduced it in my book, Disruptive Thinking in Our Classrooms. And, I describe disruptive thinking as the ability of students to replace conventional ideas with innovative solutions to authentic problems. And it really was the pandemic, COVID-19, that kind of led me to this definition of disruptive thinking. But, when we think about all the disruptive events, whether it's economic, societal, environmental, political, and now we also have AI. So, when we think about what our learners need, they need learning that is future proofed. So, imagine if we all had a crystal ball. I'm sure this would have come in handy prior to the pandemic or even prior to Bitcoin. Oh my goodness, imagine if we had that crystal ball and it told us invest all of our money in Bitcoin. We would be like gajillionaires. Well, what if I told you that we might have actually had a crystal ball in the form of a retro animated series that aired over 50 years ago that predicted some modern technological innovations? I shared again in Disruptive Thinking in Our Classrooms, which is, by the way, available on Amazon, that one of my favorite shows as a kid was The Jetsons. Even though it only aired for one season in the 1960s, or a season and a half maybe, I got my fill thanks to nonstop reruns throughout my childhood. For those who have not seen the show, it focuses on a futuristic family residing in Orbit City, whose architecture looks like it was invented by Google, with all the living residences and businesses raised on adjustable columns, high above the ground. The entire series revolved around the family's life, 100 years into the future, which, by the way, was assisted by labor-saving technologies that often broke down in humorous ways. The Jetsons provide us a glimpse into what society could look like one day and inspired people young and old to dream about the future. I was one of them. Some of the show's bold predictions actually came true, including video conferencing, robots, smartwatches, drones, jetpacks, holograms, and even automated homes. Other inventions that we saw through the Jetsons are within our grasp, such as flying cars, driverless vehicles, and computers so powerful they have the operating capacity of the human brain, aka AI. Things are moving fast in our world. In the words of Ferris Bueller, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. This is spot on advice to keep in mind as we enter further in to our own Jetsons moment. Life sure does move fast. Even before the pandemic, it was difficult, if not near impossible, to keep up with all the exponential change that was a result of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The Jetsons moment has become ingrained in our lives, no matter where we live or work. In a short period of time, we have seen innovative companies such as Uber, Lyft, Vrbo, DoorDash, Robinhood, Airbnb disrupt many traditional service areas. While there might be a consistent focus on disruption now, the fact remains that it's not new and has been impacting the world since the beginning of time. Just take a ride through Epcot's spaceship Earth, which shows us how papyrus paper, the printing press, television, and the first home computer not only disrupted, but revolutionized the world. Exponential change is the new normal. To adequately prepare students, the key is to future proof learning so they are always ready for whatever faces them. Another key line from the book is don't prepare learners for something, prepare them for everything and anything. While this might seem like a stretch or even impossible, I'm here to assure you it's not. So, where do we begin? There are 5 areas that we can really hone in on, whether we are a teacher, an administrator, a coach, support staff. These 5 areas can help us begin to future-proof learning, and they will withstand the test of time. Number 1, we want to develop higher order thinking through scaffolded questions and tasks. So think about Bloom's taxonomy, Webb's depth of knowledge, cognitive flexibility, whatever you want to focus on. The key in this disruptive world is not to continually ask students questions where there is one right answer. We really want to get them to not only think, but are we providing an appropriate amount of challenge? This doesn't mean that every student can answer or solve the most challenging questions and tasks. But scaffolding is not new. So when you think about your Blue Kits, Kahoots, Gimkits, Quizzes, Quizwizzers, if we're only asking those recall knowledge-based questions, that's where actually AI can help. And AI can help scaffold and create higher thinking, even multiple choice questions. So let's get our kids to think. Number 2, if we want to future-proof learning, there has to be authentic application of knowledge and concepts in connection with real-world problems. When we think about the real challenge in education, we have an engagement issue. Most kids are compliant, some are disengaged, but they're not actually engaged in learning. They don't see the value. They don't understand the why. And if learning is relevant, students won't just be able to tell you what they learned. They'll be able to tell you why they're learning it and how they will use it outside of school. Future-proofing learning relies on students being able to do real-world work with real-world tools and to use what they're learning to construct new knowledge to solve real-world problems. Number 3, to future-proof learning, we must focus on the purposeful use of tech driven by the learner. Here's the thing, everybody. When we think about technology, the key question to ask is, how are students using tech to learn in ways that they couldn't without it? It's not about all kids on a device. It's not about the adult using the interactive screen or panel. We want students to do the thinking, to do the work. And if they're going to use technology, we want to go back to those first 2 pieces. Develop higher order thinking questions and tasks. Authentic application of knowledge and concepts of real world problems. And that's where tech comes in. We can't put our heads in the sand. We can't say that kids are using tech too much. They're using it a lot, everybody, but not in the right way. Kids know how to use tech, but they don't know how to use tech necessarily to support their learning. And that is a key tenet of future-proofing learning, purposeful use. Number 4, to future-proof learning, we have to ensure equity and cognitive flexibility through personalization. So what does that mean? The definition that Nikki Slaw and I created for our book, Personalize, was this: personalized learning is all students getting what they need, when and where they need it to learn. That's the equity piece, everybody. And we also want to make sure that cognitive flexibility, that we are challenging students in ways that are reflective of their interests, their preferences. Notice I did not say styles. Learning styles has been debunked, but we do have different ways that we prefer to learn. And personalization could manifest itself in so many different ways. It could be through student voice, where all students are answering questions in relation to reviews of prior learning, checks for understanding, closure tasks, using post-its, whiteboards, dry erase surfaces, or technology. Personalization could be choice, choosing how to demonstrate understanding, choosing the right tool for the right task, or choosing an option in a choice board, a playlist, or a may-do section. Personalization happens when we let kids work at their own pace within reason. Learning is a process. It's not an event. It takes time. Place. Place could be flexible seating with flexible pedagogy. It could be outside. It could be virtual. And then finally, path. Learning is anything but linear. We can't put students on a linear line, have them consistently do the same thing the same way at the same time, and expect that they are going to be ready, that they're going to be future-proofed for this disruptive world. So as you think about personalization, rotational models, choice boards, playlists, flipped lessons, virtual courses, asynchronous options, hybrid. There's so many different ways, and that's the point about personalization, everybody. First, it's not about putting all kids on a device. Second, there is not one right or best way to personalize. But personalization has to be part of the conversation when we talk about future-proofing learning. And finally, number 5, if a school feels like a school, functions like a school, looks like a school, is that really reflective of the world that our students need to survive and thrive in? The answer is no. So number 5 is we have to work to create learning environments that reflect current and future contexts. Future-proofing learning is as much about the present as it is the future. And as we think about what the research says about learning environment, everything from furniture, layout, color, temperature, acoustics, all those elements can impact learning by as much as 25% positive or negative. And we want, like right now, I am in my sweats. I am in my garage. I am relaxed. Earlier today, I was laying on my couch doing my work. So we have to really think about is having students at desks in rows, bells ushering them, calendars, rigid schedules. Is that really an environment that is going to help our students be successful? The answer is no. And yes, I get it. It's going to take time. But maybe we just begin to move our desks into collaborative arrangements. Maybe we really move to just get rid of those bells. Maybe we really begin to look at everything that's on our walls and ask ourselves, are there too many anchor charts? Is it too stimulating? So, as we, again, think about future-proof and learning, let me go through that list. The 5 ways to future-proof. Number 1, develop higher-order thinking through scaffolded questions and tasks. Number 2, authentic application of knowledge and concepts in connection with real-world problems. 3, purposeful use of tech driven by the learner. 4, equity and cognitive flexibility through personalization. And 5, learning environments that reflect current and future classrooms. Creating a classroom culture that empowers students to replace conventional ideas with innovative solutions to authentic problems can lead to prosperity in a bold new world. My friends, disruption is here to stay. Thus, the need to future-proof learning is of utmost importance. Disruptive thinking is the way to get there. I want to thank you all again for joining me on this adventure, which is unpacking the backpack. If you want to dive more deeply into today's topic, I will have a link to a blog post and an image in the show notes. You could also get your copy of Disruptive Thinking in Our Classrooms on Amazon. Until next time, everyone, keep making a difference.